The majestic landscapes and dramatic skyboxes of the Destiny universe have always been a remarkable part of our journey. They dwarf our characters, engulf us in mystery, and display the larger-than-life forces that have invaded these worlds. But what if there was more to be gleaned? Clues hidden in the unique alien flora that decorate every planet. Stories told in the texture of the surfaces we mantle and walk on. Rules and logics implied by the names and lore attached to the landmarks, weapons, and armor, conveying a past that explains the present and possibly the future. Join me as I look into the fascinating inspirations that appear in the Destiny universe and what they imply about the worlds of the Guardian. This is ZiL with ZiL's D2 Science Slaps. The Lorentz Driver is a curious weapon made from non-weapon parts. A linear fusion rifle powered by an electric battery that somehow inflicts void damage, with a sight that uses telemetry to find your targets. How can a weapon that uses electricity create gravitational damage? How does this sight work? Well, the first clue I found was in the name itself and its special Lagrangian sight. The Lorentz Driver seems to be named after a scientist, Henry Lorentz, whose work rivaled and influenced Einstein's general relativity and gave us special relativity, as well as numerous other special principles. The power that I feel is at play here is a multi-part system that utilizes what is known as the Lorentz force. A brief description of this force is the occurrence of a flow of reciprocating electrons around the path of an electric current, for example, a wire powered by a battery. This effect can be visualized by the use of a horseshoe magnet. Place the electrified wire between the two sides of the magnet, and when the power is turned on, the magnet will react by being pushed or pulled depending on the flow of the electricity. This would actually explain the odd-looking mechanism that starts at the bottom of the barrel, extending and wrapping around the tip. But that's only part of it, because something that still hasn't been explained is what this weapon fires. Well, it turns out that the space programs have been using the Lorentz force to create a more efficient means of propulsion than that of the chemical rockets we are used to seeing. Magnetoplasma dynamic thrusters, also called Lorentz accelerators. This type of propulsion uses a power source to charge gases into an ionized state, creating charged particles. The ionized gas is then sent into an acceleration chamber, where it is exposed to powerful electric and magnetic fields. An electric current is then sent through the plasma, flowing from the anode ring to the cathode rod to create a Lorentz force that ejects the plasma at high velocities before being further accelerated by the external magnetic field. This rifle might be a miniature Lorentz accelerator. However, while we have a working theory on how the gun works, this is still a peculiar effect producing a void damage. As we know, void in Destiny relates to gravitational damage. So how does shooting energy into a target turn them into what appears to be a black hole? Well, this brings us to a scientific principle that most of us are familiar with. E equals mc squared, the equation that expresses the law of special relativity. Unable to avoid reminding us of the horrors of math, simply remember that when adding or subtracting a value to one side of the equation, the same value must be relatively added or subtracted to the other side. For a quick breakdown and what the values in the equation represent, E equals energy, m equals mass, and c equals the speed of light are constant. So, if you were to drive or add a bunch of energy into an object, an equivalent value of relative mass must also be added as well. And clearly, we are using a power source of immense energy, as so much is driven into the target that their mass is forced to increase to an exponentially high level, tugging in the matter in an attempt to gain the required mass to create the electromagnetic anomaly. This looks like a black hole that lasts for just a moment, and that's most likely because it is in fact a failed black hole, as it is unable to sustain itself. Let's continue with the other special part of this weapon, the part that truly turned this weapon into a nightmare for the Crucible, the Lagrangian sight. Beyond the function of providing the player with an in-game wall hack, the Lagrangian sight is a reference to the Lagrangian function. This formula uses telemetry to determine the destined path of an object based on its inertia and relativity to the objects around it. And for the final clue, to engage the Lagrangian sight, you must collect 3 telemetry patterns. And the Lagrangian function is used to solve the 3-body problem, which involved tracking and understanding the telemetry of 3 similarly sized heavenly bodies and their gravitational effects on one another. While most know this gun for its terrifying reign in the Crucible, the artistic approach to creating an unorthodox paracausal weapon feels like such a fantastic choice, full of details that begin to boggle the mind the deeper you look. While looking into the involvement of Henry Lorentz and his role in producing our understanding of the special relativity, you begin to see a hidden story begin. A story that upends our understanding of how the universe functions. Have you ever wondered what was believed before we used the laws of relativity? In the equation E equals mc squared, c, standing for the speed of light, was determined to be a constant. But before this was a widely accepted idea or theory that there was an ether, a term named after the aether, or the breath of the gods. The ether was believed to be a substance that occupied the universe and propagated light through it. A number of experiments were done that seemed to prove that there was no such thing. But Henry Lorentz still argued that it was still out there, undiscovered. And people have been looking. There are theories after observing the flow of the universe, how strands of energy guided by magnetic spin swirl everything into a Fibonacci sequence tangle, weaving matter into existence. That perhaps the motion, the inertia of the universe is an expression of the ether observed in the flow of magnetic fields. In an observing of the magnetic fields, we begin to see more in-game science references, as the equator of a magnetic field is called the plane of inertia. And if inertia is indeed the constant of the universe that dictates the speed of cause becoming effect, then this is also called the speed of causality. What do you make of the science that seems to be hidden in this weapon? Do you think there might be any ulterior functions that these systems might be cluing us into? Please like and comment your thoughts below, and if it is of interest to you, please join me as I look into how electromagnetism plays a role in the worlds and weapons of destiny in the next ZiL Science Slaps.